everyone, and welcome back to Jericho Energy Ventures channel. We're sitting here once again with President and CEO Brian Williamson. Brian, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Michael. Thanks for having me back.
Of course, glad to have you. And so let's kind of dive in it. We want to talk about your guys' recent news release. We want to talk about what's going on in the industry as a whole, especially in relation to what's happened in the US recently. But yeah, first off, let's kick it off. Let's talk about your guys' recent white paper release.
Yeah, thanks. And so the idea behind releasing the white paper, Michael, was we were getting a ton of inbound calls and traffic on questions that were about cost, about output, about functionality, about efficiency. And so while we felt like, a PowerPoint is always helpful, a lot of the calls were coming from engineers who were designing systems built to include our boiler. Mm-hmm. And so we felt like the best thing we could do would be to lay each of the parts out from an efficiency perspective, from a cost perspective, from a fit perspective, from an output perspective, so that we had one central document that gave people all the information they needed, to apply our boiler into their given application. And what we've seen in the short time it's been out is we've had a really good advancement in discussions with a lot of folks because they're coming back with thoughtful questions that come from all the information they gathered from the white paper.
All right. So let's kind of dive into this. You guys said that the cost is going to be competitive, and you said your fuel efficiency is reaching 95 to 98%, which, as far as I know, that's unrivaled. Can you tell us more about how you actually accomplish this?
Right, and it's a great question, and it's a critical component of the system. So when you think about a steam generation boiler, steam producing boiler, you always historically have had to have some mechanism for emitting your NOx and your SOx, right? Because you had waste gas, you had waste that needed to be emitted into the air. You always had to have some release system, and typically a smokestack. Well, in creating that smokestack, although more efficient over time, you still had heat loss that came with those emissions. It's impossible to get rid of your NOx and SOx without having some waste heat lost. So what you see is so different about our system is that our system has zero emissions, right? It's completely closed loop because we have no combustion. We have no NOx and SOx in our system. It's a chemical reaction. You don't have to deal with any waste gas. So energy in, energy out should be pretty close to one, right? Because we don't have to release anything into the atmosphere. And you have a continual vacuum-based loop system in it. So that vacuum-based loop system gives you fairly high efficiency where you're looking at close to 95, 98%. When you see us talk efficiency loss in the white paper, it typically comes from the fact that somebody's asked us to connect our boiler to an electrolyzer. And so best-in-class electrolyzers are warranted at 80% efficient. So when you multiply that by our system, you get a combined efficiency of about 88+%.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If there's no waste gases, you're saving pretty much all the heat. Interesting. So kind of playing off that, you're kind of seeing green hydrogen really coming to fruition throughout the world, especially in the USA now. This has to really validate what you guys have been striving for, with them really wanting to lower hydrogen costs, and also mentioning going more towards green hydrogen as well. You had mentioned before getting hydrogen under $3, right, per kilo, and they're talking about aiming for under $1 per kilo. Can you tell me more about what your guys' thoughts are on this?
I think $1 a kilogram would be amazing for the industry, and it would be game changing, because you would be delivering a fuel source that is not only clean, but it's cheaper than natural gas that's in the market today. The U.S., the benefit and the detriment to the U.S. is how good we are at energy development. We have been able to provide the population of the United States with natural gas, cheap energy for a long period of time. So for hydrogen to be cost competitive, not just clean, you need to get down to that $1 per kilogram range. It's very hard. And it requires scale. It's like anything else. The bigger the scale, the easier it is to make it cheaper. And so for green hydrogen, I just think it's a matter of scaling it. You need more efficiencies in the tech, and you need to scale it. And right now, where you're losing efficiencies is that you don't have on-site generation at a lot of spots. Green hydrogen has to come from a renewable resource. And right now you don't have renewable resources everywhere in the country. So you're going to struggle until you have an expanded renewable portfolio, and you have a matching scalable hydrogen system.
Yeah, Brian, getting into like the brass tacks of it, the infrastructure has been set this one way for a long time. So it takes a lot, it's a lot of inertia there. It's hard to get things moving, but the US coming out and saying that they're really aiming for it is a really positive play. It really shows they plan on making a change soon.
Well, remember, you're talking about the most impactful molecule, right? Hydrogen's energy content is what makes it so valuable, right? A hydrogen molecule has 3 times the energy content of a natural gas molecule. So it has so much potential, right? And so to be able to take that potential and harvest it, I think is what everybody's seeing. It's just that, like everything else, it's going to take time for the infrastructure to build its way out. And with that build out becomes efficiencies. Remember, there was a time when we were short natural gas and it was $10 and $12 an MCF.
Yeah.
It wasn't sub $3.
Yeah, you're right. It does take time, and it'll be interesting to see what it turns into. And this will have ramifications across everything, right? Everything moves more towards green and away
Absolutely.
from natural gas. Things will be looking good for Jericho and companies similar. All right, Brian, do you have any closing remarks about this?
No, I just think that the hydrogen economy is going to be a big part of the energy revolution, and people have to realize that this is not going to be a passing fancy or fleeting, sentiment. I think you're seeing it getting stickier and stickier when you have big corporate organizations applying hydrogen and utilizing hydrogen in their industrial processes. It makes it a part of everyday life here, and I think that's great. I think you're going to see an amazing transition in the energy mix in the not too distant future.
Well said, Brian, and thank you for the wisdom and congratulations on the white paper release. If anyone has any questions about any of this, please send them over to us. We'll be happy to answer them for you. And stay tuned. We'll get some more updates to you as soon as we can.
Thanks, Michael.